Hi everyone, Mike here from Watch It Paint It. Anyone who's tried to paint 3D printed terrain or models will notice that there's a big difference between those and models produced by a manufacturer. Low-resolution plastic printers and even high-quality resin printers will still have tiny imperfections in the printed model, most notably printer lines. The terrain I'm painting today is from a high-resolution resin printer, but as you can see, there are still those little imperfections. Now, there are a few things you can do to minimize those imperfections, such as sanding or filler primers. Those help, but they're not perfect. Really, the best way is just to change your painting method, and one of the biggest things you can do is to avoid using washes. Washes are going to get pulled into the printer lines via capillary action and make a mess, so how can we go from the model on the left to the one on the right without any washes? One way is to start off with dark colors and then build your way up to brighter colors. These are the colors I'll be using to demonstrate this in case you're interested. I want to try to paint a sandstone effect on this face, so I'll be using a mixture of browns and tans to do that. After priming in black, I'm going to give this entire model a heavy dry brush with a dark brown. Dry brushing and stippling are going to be a big part of this paint process. I'm starting off with Oak Brown Fanatic paint, which I've thinned with a bit of water, and then I'm using a cheap makeup brush to do a heavy dry brush base coat. Now, whether you're painting terrain, big or small, or even tiny miniatures, sponge is an effective tool. For something small like this blood angel I painted a while back, you can use small bits of sponge and stuff them into the bristle protectors that come with paintbrushes. For large terrain, I just tear off a big hunk of sponge and dip it into some slightly thinned paint that's sitting on my wet palette. I dab off the excess paint onto a piece of paper towel, and then I proceed to dab it all over the surface of the terrain. You want to dab this on lightly so you don't get smearing, and this is a good way to avoid creating brush strokes or to get a nice textured effect. One benefit of using a sponge is that it won't cover the recesses with paint. Those areas are going to stay dark. Some spots might be difficult to reach with a bit of sponge, so you may either want to switch to a soft bristle brush like a makeup brush, or do what I did with the blood angel, just stick a small piece of sponge into a brush protector. Now, I am painting sandstone in this video, so I'm going to be going for a deliberately textured effect, but you can still apply this technique to other models. I want to add another layer of color onto the terrain, but this one is going to be a little bit brighter. I'm going to use a brush this time and be more selective with where I put the paint. This paint isn't going all over the model, I want some of that first color showing through. Now, if I wanted this to be a highlight layer, then I would focus most of the color on the upward facing parts of the model. But for now, I just want some color variation, so I'm stippling this paint in random spots all over. Now I'm using a color that's slightly darker. Once again, I'm stippling this on, and just like before, I'll be reducing the amount of area that I cover with this color. I don't want to hide any of the previous colors. I've used methods like this on rocks, vehicles, armor plates, and if you want to create a highlight, then you would start with your darkest color and then work your way up to the lightest. And on that note, I'm switching to the lightest color, and this one will be strictly for dry brushing edges to make them pop. I'm switching to a smaller brush now just for a little extra accuracy. When dry brushing 3D printed terrain, you do want to be careful to only move your brush over the edges themselves and not all over the terrain. Otherwise, any raised print lines are going to be accentuated by the dry brushing, and our goal here is to keep those hidden as much as possible. Now, what do you do if you're a little bit heavy-handed with the stippling and dry brushing and you've covered up too much of your shadows? In that case, you can take some of your original dark color, mine was Oak Brown, and then thin it down a bit and paint it directly into the areas that you want to be shadowed. Don't be tempted to use a wash. A thinned down paint will work much better for this. I ended up mixing a little bit of black into my original brown, and that seemed to match the shadow color a little bit better. The last step was just to finish off the base with some light and dark grays, using the same methods. And there you have it, only about half an hour of actual work. I mean, it is terrain after all, and the sponges really help speed things up. I hope you guys found that useful. I'm Mike from Watch It Paint It, and thanks for watching.